Hello everyone, and welcome to this session on the benefits of SaaS. In this session, we're going to discuss some of the opportunities that moving to SaaS has enabled lenders through the presentation of two real use cases. To present our guests, I have here with me James, our head of asset finance, who will lead the session. Welcome, James.
Thank you very much, Bettina, and welcome everybody. It's with great pleasure that I'm able to talk today about the benefits of SaaS with two valued customers, John Mitzi, who's the CEO and co-founder of Vero Technologies, and also Jasper van Tongeren, who's the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Bequip. I'm going to introduce these guys into the conversation in a minute, but just first of all, I wanted to give you a little bit of context to this whole conversation about a topic that I'm very passionate about, and we at Sopra Banking are very passionate about. So SaaS, a lot of people talk about SaaS, so it's one of the real buzzwords in the industry right now. And what I thought I'd do is give you a little bit of background as to our experiences and why we brought this thing into the industry from a Sopra Banking software perspective. So we consider there to be some market problems a few years ago that we were looking to solve. Firstly, I think everybody would agree to this fast changing market, lots of digital transformation going on, and that's really driving the need for replatforming in large automotive organizations, asset finance organizations, and then also in some of the smaller organizations. So we'd seen that over a long period of time that the projects were getting big, they're disruptive, time consuming, risky and costly. So in some cases we were seeing case studies where the TCO savings weren't really being matched by, weren't able to outweigh the cost of the implementations. So our solution was to bring a SaaS offer into the market. And I'm not going to go through all of the detail on this slide, but just to say that the SaaS, there's a lot of talk about SaaS, as I mentioned just now, a lot of people talking about having SaaS products. But for me, it's not just about bringing a cloud solution to the market. SaaS means, yes, leveraging cloud services, hosting in the cloud, being able to do things in a really fast way in terms of bringing systems up. So the speed of projects, my top bubble there, it's really important that you have a standard product, you manage that product in a very efficient way. And then overall, you're looking to lower TCO, bring down the total cost of ownership. And that's driven through having evergreen software and Sopra Banking managing the quality so that we're able to continuously deploy the software and mean that the guys you're going to talk to in just a minute don't have to have all the disruption and all the problems of accepting software releases and so on. There's other things that really feed into this, and really what we're looking to do is to bring a solution that's fast to implement, cheap to run, and is scalable and efficient. So again, I'm not going to go through all the detail in there, but what I thought I would share just before we get into the other question we asked ourselves was, you see probably Salesforce is the best example of SaaS in the industry. The question we asked ourselves was, that's a very horizontal business. Could we bring this product into a complex, sophisticated vertical like automotive and asset finance? And we believe the answer is yes, of course, because I wouldn't be having this conversation. But our conclusion was, yes, it's becoming increasingly applicable in this market sector. We believe small companies and startups absolutely ready for it now, and that's going to be the major thrust of the next 25 minutes or so. But we also believe that it will become increasingly applicable to large organizations as we go through. To bring this to life, the left-hand side there, really about time to value, time to market, low cost, utility computing, only paying for what you use. And the idea here is that the cost base grows as the in line with the business plan. And again, John and Jasper will be able to take you through that. One of our 4 SaaS startup customers that have come on in the last 12 months. But also we believe that it's ultimately going to be applicable for large organizations as the compelling value proposition kicks in. The interesting thing for us in our journey was that actually it was something in the middle was our first customer, which was BMW, where the benefits that they were looking for was kind of in between the two ends of the spectrum, and we went into Greece with them with a SaaS offering. So as I say, the remainder of this session is really going to be you listening to the comments from our valued customers rather than from me, and it's focused on that kind of the perspective of startups in quite different businesses and different markets. So with that, we'll jump straight in. And my first question really to you, Jasper, is could you just tell us from a business perspective the story of Bequip? Because I think it'd be really good for everyone to get a bit of context.
Yeah, sure, sure. Thanks for actually inviting me, and I'm really happy to be here and talk about our positive experience so far with you guys. And yeah, but let me start with Be Quick. Yeah, we started about 6 years ago, and we saw an opportunity that traditional leasing companies were not focused on, and that was used heavy equipment. And with heavy equipment, I mean like excavators, cranes, trucks, and trailers. We finance new as well, but we're aiming to finance used equipment because they are afraid to actually assess what the value is of that used equipment. And we work with a lot of seasoned equipment experts who can put a value to that equipment quite easily. Now, the aim of our business is to help grow small, medium enterprises, specifically in the Netherlands. And we've been quite successful over the past 6 years. We grew with more than 1 billion in loans provided right now. And that's, I think it's quite impressive when you look at how small the Netherlands is. And we really found a spot where our customers were underserved. Now, what's interesting to understand is that for every lease deal, there's not just one end consumer, lessee, not one person who we have a contract with. There's also a supplier, an equipment supplier, and we're actually in between these two parties. So over the last 6 years, we've gotten to know way more suppliers, and they also have issues with financing their equipment, and that's a little bit different. So we're leasing the equipment of the end consumer, and we got an ask from the suppliers of this heavy equipment if we could finance their equipment in the showroom, and that's actually how we get to know you guys.
Okay. And I guess just as a very brief follow-up conversation there, Jasper, I mean, that supplier business, one of the key things that I mentioned up front is about you have to kind of have a standard business, but then you also need to be able to drive the needs of your customers. So how did the SaaS product help you in kind of getting that balance right, if you like?
The balance between the two of them. Yeah, what we're looking for is we're moving up in the vertical. So we're moving from the end user, the consumer. We have one lease up to the supplier. So what we're aiming for is that supplier, we finance their showroom, we finance their equipment. And after they find a customer to buy their equipment, they can convince them to actually lease their equipment. And that's how we can extend create a bigger leasing book for us. And we can actually extend the leases that we provide to both parties.
Okay, great. And John, maybe bringing you into the conversation. I know you're in a very different market. Could you tell us a little bit about the background to your business and how you come into the market, how you position yourselves? Be really interested to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had gotten some exposure to the independent auto finance world in a prior role, and frankly saw a massive market that seemed to not have been innovated within, at least as of the last decade or so. And so it was enough to pique our interest in terms of exploring how we could use technology to really streamline floor plan financing for independent auto dealers. And the idea is really to automate and provide a fintech solution for these auto dealers, initially to support their inventory financing operations, but beyond that, in the future, to really think of ourselves as an embedded finance platform where we can support other banking products, whether it's deposit accounts, debit cards, and frankly, give auto dealers more transparency across their financial operations, as well as ideally consolidate their banking relationships.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And so maybe John, for you to carry on a little bit, what did you see as being the biggest challenges? Because you're setting this business up from scratch. What were the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest or the most important thing for us was we wanted to get into the market as quickly as possible. Building a bunch of technology in a vacuum is great. The engineering team loves that. But when you try to then go to market and get users on the platform, inevitably, without having that feedback loop built in, you're spending money on development and the functions and features you're building may not work in the user's hands. So our goal was to launch within 6 months of incorporating and get dealers on the platform and start lending. So for our, we needed to put the technology systems in place to support a complex lending operation. And ultimately, I can give a lot of props to our CTO who led this initiative, but standing up the loan management system with SFPW and then building out the necessary interfaces around SFPW to support our borrower experience was a heavy lift, but we were able to do it successfully.
Yeah, and I can vouch for your CTO as well. He's a super clever guy with a good vision. I'm really interested to come back and talk, link all that back into the SaaS offering in a minute. But really, the same question to you, Jasper. In the meantime, is what were the challenges you faced because you had a similar kind of scenario of setting a business up?
Yeah, it's quite similar. Like we were also looking at a fast time to market. So we didn't want to build something from scratch, really tailor-made. We were looking to get up and running as quickly as possible. So we were willing to adjust process to make sure that we had like an out-of-the-box solution that we can use almost from the get-go. And that for us was really important because and also I guess a little bit easier because we didn't know a lot about the inventory finance world. We have 5-6 years. We had at the time 5 years of experience in leasing, but not of inventory finance. So we really benefited from the experience that's actually in the system, in the SaaS solution that you offer. Because then from there we automatically get embedded the processes that we need to administer all the inventory finance deals that we're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you were our first ever startup company on the SaaS product, and it was music to my ears when I heard that we were talking to a Dutch company who was trying to get into this inventory finance business. And just thinking about that, and thinking about the SaaS offerings specifically, what were your major considerations when you were thinking about trying to select this solution? To you first, Justin.
For us was definitely time to market. So we really wanted to get up and running. And to be totally honest, we got up so fast. I think we got up in like 4 weeks, which is amazing compared to other competitors in the market. And it was so fast that it's very challenging for us to find seasoned professionals that could actually work in this space. We thought they were easier to come by. So it took us a couple of months to get the right people to actually do the work itself. And we had the IT up and running. And I'm the CTO, so that's a great problem for me to have, that my work is done and that HR and other people in the business, commercial people need to get their act together to actually get it up and running. So that's a nice thing.
So I should probably say at this point, Jasper, that you guys have got a genius CTO as well. Otherwise, I've been said that.
I don't think I said that, but thank you.
And John, on your side, you were our first US customer on the SaaS product, and again, it was music to our ears when we realised that you had this company. You still fast time to market was key for you, but you have this very different play with the technology element of it. So, do you want to describe the challenges you faced and how you kind of built that thing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did a very thorough survey of all of the available providers in the asset finance space. And frankly, in terms of the vision we are very focused on using or catering to the borrower's experience as a differentiator for us. So building out the workflow tools, the dealer portal that gives our customers the information they need in a way that's very easily consumable. So what became very important in evaluating loan management systems was what has the APIs and is built on a flexible infrastructure that we can build against, so that as we build this wrapper around our kind of back-end loan management systems, we need to make sure everything is well integrated and effectively supports us as we're scaling. And from a architecture perspective, SFPW was really the only player in the space that came out of the box with the sets of APIs that we needed to support our business operations. So that was critical, and it allowed us to not just stand up the loan management system, but build around it very efficiently and in a way that we simply would not have been able to do with some other products.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And thinking about the fundamentals of what SaaS really is, as I was describing earlier, it's about having a cloud-based solution, but it's also about having a standard piece of technology that you keep as standard as you possibly can. And what was the experience on both sides in terms of, I guess, matching the processes you're going to put in to the processes that we consider to be sort of industry standard out of the box versus you, Jasper?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, like the process was really great that we got the process from you guys out of the box, because we didn't know a lot about inventory finance yet. So that just came with it. That's really great, and that's also how we approached it from the perspective of how we integrated the whole product. So we first want to get to know our customers, and I think in a couple of months' time we're looking to maybe build a more flexible front end that is really tailored to our customers. That will be able to work collaborate really nicely with the SaaS solution that you offer. But first, we want to understand the customer and get a couple of deals to run through the SaaS system, so we understand the process better, we understand our customers better, and then we can start building a little bit more flexibility on the front end. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, when we look now, guys, no one's got a crystal ball to see where this goes. But how do you see the businesses growing? How do you see the scaling side of these things, and how do you have to think about the technology aspect of it as you scale? Firstly, maybe you, John.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the benefit of us getting into market as early on as we did, is that we on a daily basis have our servicing and operations team talking about what bottlenecks they have. And then we have feedback from our dealers on a daily basis, because we're getting the customer service calls saying, why isn't the system working this way, or where is this piece of information? And so ultimately we have it's a balancing act, because I don't want our CTO and engineering team to be fully reactive 100% of the time to what we're hearing on a daily basis. But we can prioritize what we build around not just SFPW, but the other core operating systems that we rely upon, and think as we're scaling, what technology or solutions do we need to develop in order to allow us to scale efficiently without just throwing more human bodies at any operational bottlenecks. And I think that was a theme that I saw, coming out of corporate banking and working in asset management, and then ultimately in the auto finance space, where rather than build a solution using technology, people were just hiring additional headcount to handle some of those bottlenecks. And that's really a mission that we hold very closely in terms of trying to build out the right solution rather than just hire that headcount.
Yeah, makes sense. What about for you, Jasper, in terms of scaling the business up?
Yeah, we're looking to create and increase our book, so our portfolio, and we set a goal for ourselves that in the next 5 years we want to build it out to like a 400 million annual volume business in the Netherlands, based on the current core equipment that we are already selling as a lease, but then as inventory finance, and that will also, like we mentioned before, will serve as an accelerator for our original or more classic lease business. So we're expecting a lot of positive additional leases to come out of that 400 million annual business volume as well. Yeah,
okay, makes sense. So I'm intrigued. Technology is obviously an important thing, but what do you guys think is, if you had to just name a couple of real key elements of a successful implementation, what would that be?
I'm happy to take the first crack at this one. From our side, recognizing that inevitably through a sales process, you evaluate the API documentation, you get to know the folks on the other side of the table. But actually having a partner who is going to give you the resources so that inevitably, especially in that first 3 or 4 weeks of an implementation process, the number of questions or issues or things that don't work the way we expect them to work, you need to have a partner in terms of a technology partner who is going to give us the team who can answer questions, who can be responsive, who can have the brainstorming conversations to really understand our business and the use cases that we're looking to support, particularly with a new product. And I can say kudos to James and his team here, because we had a working group that met twice a week for those first month or two that allowed us to really facilitate a successful implementation and not waste time, which ultimately, as we look at our engineering team, and if they're held up and can't continue moving forward on a bit, they're still a cost center for us. And so being able to keep progress moving forward is really critical in terms of facilitating that successful implementation experience.
And it's probably worth saying, John, the assurance I gave you at the beginning is we didn't want to be the blocker to you going fast, because you guys have been moving fast, and it's impressive. And so I guess same thing to you, Jasper. Any insight into what you see as being the sort of key success factors when you're trying to set up a business and go through an implementation of this nature?
Yeah, the implementation itself is what we mentioned before. For us, it's really important that we can get to market really fast. Like 4 weeks is just, I could not have imagined that before with other competitors in the market, that I don't think they move that fast. And the other piece is you guys also have the experience in this area. You have multiple customers, so you know how you should set up this type of business. And that also gives us a really like a kickstart to have this business up and running. And the last piece maybe is that after implementation is how seamless it actually works, right? In the past, when you have a tailor-made solution, then you create together, you create a new solution, and then you have to go back and readjust and make changes. And that's just not necessary. It's just it's getting closer and closer to plug and play, and that's really great for us. So we don't even have the feeling that we're working on an IT product. It's just something that works and that we can use to generate business and focus way more time on our business. I think that's really important to us.
Yeah, okay. And I'm really intrigued because I know you've both worked in much larger organizations, and I made a really bold statement at the beginning that I think over time that the SaaS deployment of a solution and the management of a big enterprise application in a SaaS mode is probably going to be applicable to all sizes of organizations. I'm just intrigued to know what you think about that statement. That's a bold statement. Is that assertion? Do you think there's credibility behind that? John, maybe you first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the realities of we benefit. Jasper and I have the advantage of not having legacy systems that we need to tear out and then plug in a new tool. And obviously, I think it's a competitive advantage for us today that we can build out an operational function in lockstep with a technology function that is very agile, that is cloud oriented, that can constantly be enhanced and with new features rolled out and whatnot, because we don't have the deep bench of people who are trained on doing things a particular way. And everyone on our team, I have conversations with every week about how they need to stay on their toes as far as doing things differently on a regular basis. So with that being said, though, it's critical when you think about a legacy business who is hamstrung by their systems, that it's a matter of time before those systems force them or make them archaic and make them lose that competitive edge. So I think the adoption of SaaS is inevitable for every large corporation, and there is approachable ways of trying it out. And so instead of thinking about it being an all or nothing thing, think about creating a vertical or a small group within the organization who starts to pilot these things, or who takes a small group of clients and tries to do things a little differently with that group of clients. And obviously it's easier said than done in a large organization, as I'm all too familiar with, but there's definitely ways that these larger organizations need to be thinking about how they can push the limits of taking advantage of the benefits of a SaaS offering relative to the legacy way of doing things.
Yeah, that's a really interesting view. What about you, Jasper? Are you anything to add to that in terms of from your experience?
Yeah, I totally agree with John. And I think what I can add, because I've also worked for a couple of really large companies, is I think if you want this to succeed, if you want to set up a business inside your business, it's actually what we did at BeQuip. Right? We're a startup. We're just 5 years old, but we started this new product, not even a year ago. And we set it up with an autonomous team as a startup within our startup. So like a large corporate can set it up in a very similar way. And I think you need two things. One is the team itself. So you need to give the mandate to the team to make their own decisions. Also from a business perspective, just send them out with OKRs, objectives and key results that you expect, but then let them solve it and make sure that they gain traction with the customers. And on the other side, I'm also a tech guy. You also need to set it up autonomously from your legacy systems as much as you can, and figure out how to integrate it later. Because first you need to figure out, like, how does this really work? What are the processes? Where is the customer volume going to be? And then little by little, iteratively, you can build it into your other systems. I think that will be the road to success that I would recommend if you want to set something similar up.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate that. So, look, I think we're getting to the point where we need to wrap the session up. Maybe last question to both of you, very similar again, is just a bit of blue sky thinking. John, where do you see things playing out in the independent auto sector in the US? Because we're in a fast changing world. Autos being impacted by consumer buying habits, technology, and so on. Where do you see the whole thing panning out?
I mean, this is a little. I may be projecting our own views in terms of where we want to take our company on this response here, but from our side, independent auto dealers need to come up and get creative with ways on how they can remain competitive relative to the Carvanas of the world. And I think today it's easy to say, oh, the Carvana's market share isn't that meaningful, but 10 years from now, I think it's going to be a very different story. So where we see ourselves fitting in is providing independent dealers a platform upon which they can really focus on what they do best, which is buying and selling those vehicles. And we can take a lot of that administrative burden and really streamline their operations in a unique way. If you think about inventory finance at the top of the value chain, there's so many other steps or business functions that we can support as our platform continues to evolve.
Yeah, makes sense. And I gave you a bit of time to think about your answer there as well, Jasper. Same thing, I guess, really for equipment finance in Europe.
Yeah, I think what will happen in the next couple of decades is a much more higher degree of digitization, not only of back-end processes, but also of front-end. So I think a lot of the techniques that you currently see in e-commerce that you will see coming back also in the heavy equipment industry. I think the car leasing industry is a little bit ahead of the heavy equipment industry, so we can learn a bunch of things from them. And I think John is definitely on the right track with his company, and also inserting a lot of fintech solutions in that and providing that to your suppliers, inventory finance suppliers, or for us also our leasing customers. And we see more and more customers, both suppliers and customers, asking for more digital solutions, faster processing, an easier way to actually get their financing done.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, well, I would just like to say at the end then, thank you, John. Thank you, Jasper. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your experiences. I hope everybody else has found it really interesting. I certainly have. And at that point, I will pass back over to Bettina in the studio.
Thanks for having us, James.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for this very informative discussion. And thank you everybody for having joined us today. Don't forget to register for another session and to look into the documents for this session. Looking forward to seeing you again. day.